All right, I think we're on. Welcome back to 755 Forever. I'm David O'Brien, Braves writer at The Athletic. I'm with my co-host as usual, Eric O'Flaherty, former Braves reliever. What's going on, Eric?
Not much. What's up, Dave?
Not much, man. The Braves had a lot better series against Oakland than they did against the Nationals, that's for sure. And that Oakland team's not terrible, man. I was kind of upset that we didn't get to see the one guy that you want to see, the closer.
Yeah,
But Braves pull out a 3-1 win today. And what I liked about and what they were encouraged about, obviously, is several of the key guys are starting to hit the ball now. And Michael Harris is getting some hits to fall because he had led the league, still does, in hard hit outs, 105 miles an hour or harder. The Braves lead the league with 50, like 53, I think, outs. And Harris had 14 of them. He's the individual leader in the National League. So that's another one of those metrics that tells you, they've got bad luck, along with the hard hit rate and the exit velo, which they lead the major leagues in those two, which they led the major leagues in those two last year. They just got a lot of results for them.
yeah. It's the hardest thing to do in baseball is, analyze yourself outside of the results. That if you're a pitcher, am I making good pitches? Am I missing barrels? If you're a hitter, am I hitting the ball hard? But, and vice versa. A lot of guys aren't very good at correcting when if you'll have a guy that's getting blown up inside with pitches and hitting duck parks, over the
Yeah.
shortstop or something like that, and he'll be riding high. And when you're not when you're not doing these things that you need to do, everything will kind of come back to the level. But they'll be, I mean, if you've watched it, they've hit a lot of balls hard, and I think everything's going to smooth out pretty soon.
So many balls to the track and even to the wall. Arcia did
Yeah,
another one today that
another
you're
one
like,
today.
you're like, how did that ball not go out? That guy's had two of those this weekend.
That's the one
And
that made me think about the balls again today. Is like
yeah,
maybe they're a little different this year
yeah.
because he
I don't
doesn't
have any
hit like
doubt,
20
but
rows, 30 rows deep a lot in the past.
yeah, I mean, the only guy that's not affected is Ozuna, but he hits them, so far and so hard that it really doesn't matter. So, and Acuna used to too. So, but they scored a run in the first inning, something that they did all last year, something that they have not done this year. And Oakland comes back, ties it in the top of the seventh on a homer off D. Lee, first guy he faced after entering. He's had a little trouble with like the first guy he's faced this year, first couple of guys, and then he smooths out and pitches great. He gave up that homer, but I thought Charlie really pitched well today. The 5 walks notwithstanding. I talked to him about it afterwards. He said a couple of those, it was raining. He couldn't had trouble gripping for the ball. A couple of them were early where he really didn't mind walking a guy. He said, yeah, you don't want to walk 5 guys, but he made big pitches and got out of them when he
Yeah.
needed to. He only gave up one hit today, 6 innings, scoreless, 6 scoreless innings with 6 strikeouts. So I thought that was a real good start by him. Jimenez, Iglesias both come in dealing. Didn't give up any hits in the eighth and ninth. D. Lee gave up that homer. So that was it. It was a good game by the Braves. And they got after they give up that run in the top of the seventh, they come back and get it back. Manufactured some runs today. Duvall, Kelenic has really looked good, by the way.
He looks
Kelenic,
way better.
since he moved into the everyday lineup, he's facing lefties. And I think everybody assumed when they put him in that platoon and they forgot that we wrote, when they got Duvall and said they're going to platoon him, we said, that makes some sense under normal circumstances. But Kelenic is a guy that hit lefties better than he hit righties last year. But I talked to him. He said, I don't know if that was because I didn't have a whole lot of opportunities against him and I got some hits. But he goes in because the year before he said I was terrible against lefties. So he's kind of always evolving his swing. And he really likes where he's at right now. He's made some adjustments. He's taken the tension out of his swing, a lot of the attention out. He's more upright, and
Yeah,
he really
that's what I
feels good.
noticed.
He
I
really
noticed
feels
his
good.
posture. He looks comfy and he looks taller and he's kind of just sitting there waiting for the pitch. He kind of looked like he was hunched over,
Yeah.
almost trying to kind of slap at the ball before. I think it was, I don't know, the last couple of weeks he kind of dropped his hands a little bit and just stood up like, throw me something. He just looks more confident.
Yeah, it was on that road trip, Chicago, Pittsburgh, where he did it. He was working on things, and then one day he unveils the swing, and Seitzer was like, "Yes, that
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that."
Yeah.
So I like where he's at right now. He's hitting lefties and righties. Duvall's hitting a lot of balls hard. And Kelenic's defense, I was talking to Harris about it yesterday. Harris said, I think if he keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to be a candidate for a Gold Glove.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
I asked some buddies because I don't watch too many of the Seattle games because of the blackout, so I hadn't really seen him play much. And Seattle fans were kind of bummed about his performance, so they'll kind of zero in on a player, and
Yeah, yeah.
be kind of mad at him and disgruntled or whatever on how that whole thing worked out after the trade. But I asked them because they watched a lot of games. I was like, hey, he's pretty good on D, right? And they said, yeah, he's legit in the outfield. He just wasn't hitting when he was in Seattle.
Yeah.
But his defense has been
So
super impressive.
so to come back in the seventh against Austin Adams, so I think they saw every game in this series. But
Yep.
Duvall walks with one out. Kelenic doubles, line drive to right field. And Sean Murphy drives in Duvall with a bloop,
Yeah.
just a little duck fart, as you said,
Double in the
between
books.
right. I mean, he could not have thrown it to a better place. It was just inside the line between first base and right field, total no man's land. Three guys in coming upon it at the same time, but it was all out of all their reach. So, but like Snit said afterwards, sometimes that's what it takes to get a guy going, get a guy
Yeah.
to, something like that falls, all of a sudden you relax a little bit. So, but yeah, it goes down as an RBI double in the books, line drive. So that did it. And then they added an insurance run. What they do on that one? Trying to remember what they did. Ozzy singled. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It was of course, who else? Marcelo Zuna doubles. They brought in JP Martinez. We finally get to see him. He comes in a pinch run and he can fly. And Olsen flies out the left. Then Ozzy singles to right, drives in JP Martinez. So that was a good pinch running move there to get an insurance run, go up 3-1 and hand it over to Iglesias. So they take the series. They really needed this win, I think, because you couldn't really, I mean, it's just one game, yeah, but you don't want to lose three consecutive series to the Pirates on the road and then at home to the Nationals and the Athletics. So they lost 3 or 4 to the Nats. They take 2 or 3 from Oakland. And the game they lost to Oakland was 11-9. So there were a lot of positives from that game. It was just
Yep.
the first bad game. First time that Sale shit the bed all year. He gives up 8
Yep.
runs, which was 4 times as many runs in 4 innings as he gave up in 37 innings in his 5 May starts.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to win. I'm sure he's going to win pitcher of the month for May. He's 5-0, give up 2 runs all year, all month, and had the incredible strikeouts to walk ratio. So he has the one bad game that really almost every starter
Yeah.
of the Cy Young contenders has had that one blow up game so far. And his was, like he said, just nothing. All the things that I was doing that have made me really good this year was like the opposite
I
because
didn't
nothing
do
was
any of
working.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather have a starter that has a blow up every 6 or 7 starts than a guy that's like pretty shaky, but weasels
Yeah.
his way through it and mixes in
Yeah.
a blow up. I mean, if you can get 6 or 7 really good starts and then you have a blow up, your numbers might not look as pretty, but you gave your team a chance to win in 6 or 7 in a row.
Yeah, because all his good starts are dominant.
Dominant.
They're not
We're
like
winning. Yeah.
escaping a bunch of jams and all that stuff. So yeah, and I mean, and totally accountable. I mean, the guy was like, there was a lot good about this game today. We had an offensive explosion. Everybody knows how we've been struggling. We get an offensive explosion today, and we lose the game. He goes, we lose the game because of one reason, and he's sitting right here. So the rest of the guys can feel good about what we did, go home, and I'll come in tomorrow. I'm
My
sure I
bad.
was out of whack or something, and I'll go over tomorrow. And he says there's probably something glaring, that I was doing, but he said he just didn't have it. And his slider wasn't breaking the same way, wasn't throwing it for strikes. His velo was down, I thought, a couple of miles per hour, 1 or 2. So just a lot of little things that just wasn't the same guy. But I would fully expect him to come out the next one and be back to being what he did because it wasn't an injury or anything.
Yeah, I think when you have one start like that, you don't even go to the drawing board, like just let it go. If you have a couple,
Yeah.
then it's kind of like, all right, what are we doing wrong? But the everybody has those days. I mean, you have a day on a Wednesday. You just wake up, feel terrible. It might be the day you're pitching if you're a starting pitcher, but for everybody else, it's just a shitty day. And then you have your next day and you move on. And those days just kind of pop up, and sometimes they fall on the day that you're on the mound. I wouldn't sweat it.
I think I like the leadoff. I don't like the idea of alternating and using a platoon at leadoff, but in this case, there's not an obvious guy. So unless either Harris or Albies just kind of steps forward and makes it clear he should be the guy. But so far, I like what they're getting in this platoon because we know Albies against lefties is as good as
Yeah.
it gets. He led major league qualifiers last year, hit 391 against lefties. This year he's hitting 327. So he's hitting leadoff against lefties. And Harris, like I said, he's leading the league in 105 plus outs, 105 plus mile an hour outs. And he had 2 doubles, 3 hits and 2 doubles on Saturday. They had 9 hits, 7 RBIs from the first 4 spots in the order.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff we saw all the time last year, have not seen this year since the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season. So, I mean, even though that was the only game they lost in the series, it was almost the most encouraging because the offense, they've been getting good pitching. And they got more of that in this series, but except for the middle game. But the offense has been struggling so bad. So to have a game like that, I thought that was the most encouraging thing of the whole series, really.
Yeah, and for them too, they need to know they can still do it, and then they need to feel that and feel what it's like for everybody to get rolling and have a few games like that. I know we've been saying it for a bit, and we're getting into June, so the whole "it's a matter of time" thing doesn't, it doesn't pull as much, but it feels like it. I mean, I just feel like you can't keep containing this many good bats, and there's been some injuries. They got Murphy back. I think pretty soon, whether it's now or right after the break, you're going to have just as much of an offense as you had last year in a lot of those big games. But I mean, there's been so many games like today where they've had to battle, 1-1 in the 7th or something like that, and it's so foreign.
Yeah, I was going to read our injury recap, but I don't see it here. So I'll come back to that when it pops up there. But Reynaldo Lopez, we kind of keep waiting for him to have a slip up. And of all the guys that you would expect would be the same every start, goes 6, 7 quality. He's the last guy because he hadn't pitched as a starter for 3 years, but he has been their most consistent guy. Well, Sale really hasn't until yesterday. But I mean, Lopez, you look what he's doing. He's going out every time and just pitching. I can't believe what a good feel he has for pitching for a guy who hasn't started. I mean, granted, he went 180 plus innings in the 2 years he was a starter, but one of them was a 5+ ERA. The other was a good year. But as for a guy that came out and was throwing 98 or 101 last year as a reliever, blowing away Braves hitters with fastballs, I'm shocked at how good of a feel he has for pitching, using 4 pitches, mixing them up. A lot of that's having great catchers.
Yeah.
But he really has a way of, when he gets in a jam, he reaches back and gets that 98 fastball that he had as a reliever and gets out of it. It's like a great weapon to have, man.
Well, it's almost a throwback, and we've talked about it. Guys like DeGrom or Strider, they get kind of criticized for their effort level and how hard they're throwing. But, I made the point, I couldn't not, like, I had to throw it about 95% effort or I couldn't locate. There's guys that can, and he's one of them. He can sit 95, 96 as a starter, and he has 98 in the tank. And it's almost a changeup, I mean, but it's adding velocity, but it's a changeup in your fastball. You're adding 4 miles an hour, and it's almost an extra pitch. If he hasn't shown them that, and he gets deep into the game and he's in a jam and he can reach back and get 98, they're timed up to 95, 96, and they're protecting against the off speed. Now we got to get ready even earlier, so it opens up to other pitches even more.
He's got a 1.73 ERA in 10 starts. He's basically got 1 or 2 fewer starts than all the other leaders, the ERA leaders. He's right at the minimum, basically, the innings required. But like we've talked about, I think the Braves are doing a great job of having him transition into this by giving him extra rest. The one start when he had normal rest was when he went 4 1/3 at Pittsburgh, had his fewest strikeouts of the year. So he's getting 5-6 innings, 5-6 days rest. And he is absolutely making the most of the opportunity. I mean, 1.73 ERA in 10 starts, 55 strikeouts, 20 walks, 57 1/3, only 42 hits. And the big thing is 2 home runs,
Yeah.
108 whip and a 207 average with 2 home runs. So just solid. He's going on giving them 6, 7 innings every time out. And that's all they need from him. And as Snit said, there's going to come a time where they're going to need him and Sale to go on regular rest. They're not going to be able to do this all year, Snit said. So, and there's not really, they don't have a hard and fast when that's going to happen, but they have a big board, a schedule board in Snit's office where they've talked about this all the time, about their plans. So they probably have a plan in mind of when they're going to do that, but he wouldn't say. He said there's no hard and fast time, but they're not going to be able to do this all year, but they like the transition of that. And instead of overloading those guys early, kind of letting that Sales basically getting stretched out and build up. He's doesn't feel strong. He's feeling better and better, every time out.
Yeah, and it's working.
Or Lopez, I'm sorry.
It's a big change. I mean, going from throwing, what did he throw last year?
Like 60 some?
66 innings. He's already at 57. So
yeah,
it's different. It's
1/3 of the way through the season.
It's different effort level, but I like that they're protecting him, and I like that they're giving him a chance. Yeah, that's the thing where I'm like, I don't know if this guy needs protecting when you look at it. Like if anybody, if a body can handle that kind of workload, it's a guy built like that. But I like that they're doing it, and I like that it's working. And that's been the issue, the last few postseasons is going into kind of hobbling into the postseason with a few guys banged up and rotation. Max was. We had a few guys that weren't ready, or that weren't at
every year.
Every year. And so I think that
the last 2 years, yeah. So they got those, and then real quick on AJ Mentor, we didn't discuss this last time. It was the morning of the last podcast, I think. AJ Mentor went on the IL, 15-day IL, with left hip inflammation. So, and this isn't a phantom one or anything. He had 5 straight scoreless outings, gave up, I think, no hits or 2 hits in 5 straight scoreless outings. And he's going to go on the 15-day IL. They didn't think it would be one of those where he could get 2 or 3 days and be ready. So that's why they'll wait, but they think he'll be ready in a couple of weeks. They're going to do it day by day. But we talked about how they have the depth. So when they get a guy with a little soreness like Pierce Johnson did, rather than have him try to wait 3 or 4 days and come back in 5, they can have a guy take 15 and space it out. And AJ is the one guy on the team that's kind of had almost the normal number of appearances. Yeah. The other guys they've been pretty careful with, but he's had 25 appearances in their 7 games. So, he's not the leader on innings on the team. That's Iglesias among the relievers. But AJ, 25 appearances. It's had a hell of a year. He's got a 2.95 ERA, but most of that's from the 2 times where he gave up a couple of runs. The only thing that's even hurt him is the 5 home runs because he's got a 0.98 whip and a 197 opponent's average, 23 strikeouts, 6 walks, and 21 innings.
Yeah, he always deals, it feels like, but I think if you could keep him around 60, 65 appearances and not creep up into that 70 range, it'd be pretty nice. And so, like 2011, me and Johnny and Craig had a ton of appearances, and what saved me was my back flared up twice. I still had 78, but I had 2 7-day spans where they were staying away from me, and I didn't pitch. And each time after that, I came back and I felt kind of refreshed. And we got to September, and I had a good September. Johnny and Craig both struggled, but their appearances were higher.
It is 57 games right now. The Braves are back to 6.5 because 6.5 because Phillies lost tonight in extra innings to the Cardinals. So the Cardinals are playing really well right now too. After everybody kind of writing them off early on, they just suck. They look like he lost the clubhouse and all that, but they're playing well right now. So the Braves, as bad as they have played for about a month offensively, are 6.5 against Phillies team that's off to a historic start.
Yeah,
best
I saw that
in
on
franchise history.
Yeah.
One of the best in Major League history through 55 games or whatever. And everybody's noted how few games they've played against teams over 500. They're doing what you're supposed to do against those teams, beating them.
You have to give them credit for that.
It's just a long way of saying the Braves, who really couldn't play any worse. They could have got maybe worse pitching. They've had good pitching, but they couldn't play worse offensively, or
No.
6.5 back on June 2nd. I don't
You
need to
couldn't
remind
expect
everybody they were
you couldn't have expected it to go worse than this. Like you couldn't have even predicted it.
right. Don't need to remind everybody they were 10.5 back in 22 behind the Mets. And I know the Phillies aren't the Mets. And the Phillies got a lot of guys who've been there and all that. So I'm not comparing the two. But and they were also in 2021 under 500 a week into August.
Eesh, I didn't remember that.
3 games under 500, 2 days into August,
Yuck.
the year they won a World Series. Now he made 4 trades and revamped the outfield, and all of those guys he got were huge down the stretch. Rosario was initially hurt, but when he came off the IL, he got hot. And of course, what he did in the end, it was an MVP of the NLCS.
Yeah.
Jacques had 2 pinch hit home runs. If they gave MVPs in the NLDS, he would have got it. Soler missed the NLCS with COVID, comes back as the World Series MVP. So, and Duvall had like 10 homers and 50 some RBIs down after the trade. All 4 of those guys were huge for the Braves. So it'd be a lot to expect them to make multiple trades and have them all make an impact. But I'm just saying, Braves have done this. They've been there. That's why they don't panic, even if the fans do. There's a lot of these players that were around then. So, that injury report brought to you by Gerber and Holder, attorneys who only represent injured workers. Just like these Braves, if you've been hurt on the job, go to www.gerberholderlaw.com. That's GERBERHOLDER law.com. Going to Boston for 2 games. They got an off day tomorrow. It's the first off day in 17 days, something like that. And they go to Boston, 2-game series, which I hate those 2-game series, but it's got Fried and Schwellenbach. So Schwellenbach's going to make his second major league start. It's going to be at Fenway.
That's a tough spot.
And I think he's up for it, man, because he played, he had a sold-out crowd the other night, or not close to selling, and did not look at all affected by it. Said he was nervous in the pen, but once he came on the field, he wasn't. Storied Fenway, I'm sure he's seen it as a kid on TV, and but I'm expecting him to go up there and pitch well, just like he did in the first game. And other than the home run he gave up, he pitched great in that first game. So Red Sox are playing a little better than we expected, and I like that they kept him around, and they could have used him. You know, they always say, yeah, if we'll see how we get there. If we need him for long relief before that, we might have to use him. Well, they had an opportunity to use him in long relief and didn't, so they fully intended to have him make a second start.
No, the way he pitched, you want to see it again. I think. I mean,
absolutely.
Sometimes guys come up and there's a lot of balls to the track and deep counts, and you know, you striking guys out on backup sliders, and you could tell they're nervous and maybe not ready. But he looked like he belonged. The
other really encouraging thing for the Braves, and we've talked about him. He's the guy I mentioned to you when I mentioned the 2 pitching prospects, but Waldrop is the guy that there's no BS. There's no hype. This is real. We saw what he did in his last, 8 starts in high A. Well, he's been at Double A. It was Schwellenbach. But what he's been in Double A all year and came out and had a first couple of starts were like Fried's in the majors, but his last 8 have been like Fried's in Double A, absolutely dominant. So they bumped him up to Triple A, and he goes out today. It wasn't his first Triple A start because he made one last year, but the one he made last year was at the very end, and they only did it because all the other minor leaguers were shut down. And they wanted him to get one more start. So they sent him to AAA, and it was a 4 1/3 innings in AAA. And he held his own. He pitched well in that. But this was really the first big one, you know, promotion of AAA and all that. So he goes up to AAA today. And at Norfolk, 6 innings, 5 hits, 3 runs. He gave up a double and a homer to the first 2 guys. Gives up 3 runs in 6 innings, 1 walk, 11 strikeouts.
Yeah.
This dude with the split and the fastball and 2 other, this dude is nasty. And I know we're going to see him. It ain't going to surprise me if we see him within a month. I mean, if he keeps doing this, because they're going to keep cycling guys in, and he's got to be next in line especially with
Yeah.
Smith Shawver now in the IL with the oblique thing. We're not going to see him for a while.
Yeah, that I didn't notice you coming through. I didn't really notice much of a difference between Double A and Triple A. And normally, you got him closer now if he's with Gwinnett. But
Right. Season high for strikeouts. He had struck out more there
yeah,
than he in Double A game.
yeah. I mean, he's ready. If you give him one more just to make sure and take a look, but now it's just you get to the point where when we need you, he's probably if it lines up. If he
Yep.
didn't just start, if it lines
Yep.
up, he's probably the next guy up.
And it's so much easier when they're at Gwinnett, especially if they're at home.
Yep.
You
Oh
know,
yeah.
scratch
Long
him, get
in
him
and out.
over here. Yep. Yep. So I wanted to ask you about a really interesting development this week. David Fletcher, some eyebrows were raised, mine were, like 2 weeks ago. He came into a game in relief, and it was a one-run game. So I'm like, why is David Fletcher pitching in relief in this one-run game? So that's when I thought, okay, there's no reason. They didn't use all their other relievers. He was the first reliever in this game when he did pitch, and it was a low-scoring one-run game. He came in. So fast forward a week, 3 nights ago, we see the notes. David Fletcher is starting. I'm going, what? So I knew he has this knuckleball, that he's throwing in. I thought it was just something funky you're doing some relief appearances, having some fun. So I talked with the Braves official, and he said, yeah, he came to us and said, I've got a knuckleball. And they said, all right, well, let's see what you can do with it in the game. And he made 4 relief appearances. 2 of them were really good. So they said, okay, let's give you a start and see because they told him we'll pitch you once a week at least, see what you can do with it. Right. And he wanted to because he's kind of sees his future
Yeah.
as an infielder is kind of blocked on this team. And as long as and the Braves like the depth, so they're not going to get rid of him. It's not like other teams are beating down the doors too, because he's got a high salary. So if somebody else
Yeah.
picked him up, they'd have to pay that salary. So he really liked his confident in his knuckleball. He goes out the other day, and pitches 5 innings and had like 6 strikeouts, and one of them was Jackson Holiday. He struck out Jackson Holiday. And the knuckleball's legit.
It's gotta be.
He's kind of like a poor man's Waldron in that it's not like he's throwing it all the time, but he's throwing it a lot more. And he obviously doesn't throw hard like Waldron,
Yeah.
but he's throwing like 80, with his fastball and and he's got a curveball. It was registering his fastball as a changeup.
Yep.
Because there was no fastballs were showing up on the game day, on the AAA game day. It was all changeups, curveballs, and knuckleballs. But I was like, no, that's a fastball, but it's just not used. It's not calibrated for 80-mile-an-hour fastballs.
Yeah. What a different game. That would never happen where you just show the coaches a knuckleball and you start in a couple weeks later.
Right. Their thinking is, well, let's exploit it. It's
Yeah.
like there's nobody throwing a knuckleball with the exception of this
No.
Waldron guy. So if you got a guy that can do it, and even if it's just as a long relief, potentially as a long reliever, why not? He's there, and they're paying him $5 million.
Yeah.
Well,
how much value does that add? If your bullpen's kind of beat up and you get down 7-1 and you hit the 6th or 7th inning, and yeah, just go chuck those up there for 3 and we'll save our arms. But you're not doing you don't have the position player in there throwing 55. This guy can actually get out
legit.
Yeah.
Legit. I mean, so it's going to be interesting to see what he can do in the next few starts. But it's not like the teams he's facing are going to have a scouting report and they're going to work on the knuckleball, because nobody can have nobody.
Yeah, you can't even prepare.
Nobody has a knuckleball that they can bring in to throw to him.
No, and you don't know what every knuckleball is its own knuckleball. It's not like a pitch that you can really prepare for. I mean, like Ari Dickey, if he started against you multiple times, there was a year where we got him because we had a tip on his fastball, and so he threw like 4 fastballs in a game, and they were all just destroyed. But his knuckleball, I mean, you have to see it a bunch, and then some of them go up, some of them go down. They go left, they go right, they double
dance,
dive, they go back and forth. Like there's not a lot you can do to prepare for him. So I mean, if he got himself a start, it's got to be legit. And the catchers had to have caught it and said, "This is legit."
It was going to be Schwellenbach's start They had Schwellenbach go to AAA,
Okay.
threw a bullpen on Monday, and he thought he was going to make, and he was going to start a game in AAA. And they said, you know what? He was packed and ready to fly to Norfolk with the team. And they said, you know what? Never mind. We want you to go to Atlanta and start there. So it just worked out well, but he handled it so well that I think he's probably going to get another one now, but we'll see. But and I'm not saying, I still think, I know it's a long shot. I
Yeah.
know but it's legit. I mean, the Braves, it's not a joke. They're not just, they've used him now
No,
5 times, including one start.
no, you don't. That's not. You're not goofing around if you're giving a guy AAA starts because there's guys
Right.
that you want up in the big leagues that need those starts.
Right, right. So I will say, I think there's probably a better chance of this guy because of the knuckleball than there was Charlie Culberson.
Yeah.
We watched Charlie, pitch in spring training, and that was kind of painful to watch. I mean, he was just in over his head as a reliever at this point of his career.
Yeah,
So
but with a knuckleball, you don't really have to learn much. It's like
exactly,
you
exactly.
have to learn how to make it do what it does, but you don't have to learn how to pitch. You just have to get it in the box.
Yeah,
Like just get it over the plate and let it do whatever it's going to do. So I don't think there's that learning curve with it.
and you could also go on short rest.
You can do whatever you want. You can pitch every
Yeah,
day.
they don't have to worry about his arm. It's not like he's a prospect. They're worried about his arm.
No, it's just like R.A. Dickey
So
pitched till he was like 44, 40. Like a lot of knuckleballers pitched into their mid 40s, and nobody else does that except like a Nolan Ryan or a Freak of
right.
Nature. And then you
Well,
got your
Necro,
knuckleballers. Necro. Yeah,
he was
but they're
throwing over
not,
300 innings a year. He
it's
made
not that
50
stressful
starts.
to push the ball. It's stressful to let your arm lay back and whip.
And Necro threw it like all the time. Waldron
Yeah.
throws a lot of other pitches, so he does a normal routine. He's
Yeah.
pretty special. I mean, that guy's got a good fastball. I mean, Waldron, what a weapon that is for that guy to be a legit pitcher and to have a knuckleball.
That's unfair.
Yeah,
You're supposed to just, be
it's a
no
last resort type thing.
hanging on. You're not supposed to be a good pitcher when you're doing that.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, you're paying a guy 5 million in this year and again next year. So why not?
Well, and he's a legit position player too, so you can,
Yeah,
I
he's a
mean,
really good defensive player too. He can't hit
yeah,
much, but he's a really good defensive player. So
yeah,
they got those rules now where, as a position player, they got to be down by 8 runs or up by 10 or something like that before you can
yeah,
use the position player. And you got to register them as something because of the Otani rule.
yeah.
I'm not real clear on the exact rules. I should bone up on those before, if there's a chance that he would come up at some point. But yeah, so you got Schwellenbach, you got Waldrop knocking on the door. That's pretty good. It's looking pretty good, especially with Smith-Shawver out with the oblique, which is unfortunate. So it's good to see these guys coming up so fast, and they're coming fast, and they're not, 20 years old like Smith-Shawver was when he came up. So, but we'll see where the offense is. And this is a long trip. You got two games in Boston. Then you got a 4-game series against the Nationals again. We just took 3 out of 4 from you, and then you got 3 at Baltimore.
Short flights at least.
So I thought they needed to make hay on this homestand. They only went 3 and 4. So you need to be on top of your game on this road trip. And, it really is. So I know people are tired of hearing it and people are sick of seeing them lose, but if you're watching closely, the offense is showing some good signs. Also, Riley had a line drive today, double that looked more like himself. Olson's hitting some balls to the wall and out. I mean, he's had a couple and a half, 2.5, 3 weeks now where he's looked more like himself. He's getting a
Yeah,
lot of extra base hits, driving in runs. I mean, he's getting a lot. That one he golfed out yesterday, that was a pitch below the strike zone. He
yeah.
destroyed it. So not many guys can golf a ball out like he does. I don't know why anybody pitches that guy low ever. With that swing he's got, with that stiff arm that he has.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
feel
know.
like you got to stay tight up and in. Like, 'cause
Yeah.
out and away, he can go the other way, and down he crushes.
He drops
I don't
that
know. I
bat
mean,
head on it. And
it's gonna go. He's got so much leverage. I bet he
yep.
swings a heavy bat too. But this team, I think, I don't know if the opponent matters as much. I think when they're
I think you're right.
right, I think they beat everybody, and I think when they're wrong, I think a lot of teams can compete with them.
Yeah, I think you're right. And they ran up against some good pitching and they made some pretty mediocre pitchers look good on this homestand. But they did face a few more good ones. But the strikeouts, they've cut those down in some recent games, and that's big because they were striking out way too much. especially with runners in scoring position. They got a couple of big hits, runners in scoring position, another good development. So I just think they're getting back to being themselves. I mean, it's basically the same hitters as they had last year, you know,
Yeah.
with the exception of Cunha. And he was
Yeah, so
struggling
much.
when yeah. I mean, as long as those guys can start doing something in the leadoff spot, and they have the last few days, I think they'll be okay. The middle of the order is just Riley needs to get back in the swing of things. He missed 2 weeks. He was just getting going before he got hurt, and now I
Hmm.
think you're seeing him getting going again. And Ozuna's showing absolutely no sign of cooling off. I mean, the guy's he's been locked in now for 13 months.
Yeah.
He's really just what he's doing is amazing. So everybody's giving it. I think people probably should have learned by now not to write them off because they've been doing that for the most part for 6 years. At least 5 of those years, they start out slow, and people are like, "It's just not the same Braves team, or they're missing this," and they inevitably win the division. So it's a different animal with Philly, I know, but people thought the Mets with
Yeah.
Showalter had turned a corner too and had all those studs in that lineup. Remember all the money and they spent, everybody thought the Mets are going to be tough to track down. And the Braves were 10 and a half back on June 1st, June 2nd, and beat them that year. So, and like we said, I know some people think you're crazy for saying it, but I really think that they'd be better off going in as the wild card. But I know everybody says you don't want to, you have to use 2 of your pitchers in that wild. But I just think they're not going to have to worry about clinching early this year. It ain't going to happen with the Phillies. But there is something to be said for that stupid not having that 5-day break.
And
And if you got
momentum,
pitching depth, like if Charlie pitches like he did today, you go 4 deep with your starters and maybe 5 deep, depending if one of these kids is ready by then, which they show a lot of signs of being ready. So we'll see. We'll see where they are. That's a long time to go to have Sale stay healthy, to have Lopez stay healthy, to have 40-year-old Charlie stay healthy. So we'll see. Max Fried is the one I think you can count on. But we've said that before, and he got sick, got the flu. You never
yeah,
know.
Max has a lot of little stuff that pops
A lot of
up.
little stuff.
I bet he doesn't have the big things. He's coming back or he's back most of the time. But
And he's
yeah,
been
I mean,
terrific since those first 2 starts.
if you've watched every game so far this year, it feels like you've watched the whole season, but it's only third.
Yeah,
I mean, the
57 games
baseball
in.
season is so long.
They're barely over a third of the way into the season.
Yeah.
So long way to go, folks. And Alex is trying. Alex will make a move or two. He will. It's impossible right now to get a really good player in June 1st. Like the Twins have got a couple of outfielders I think that can really help the Braves, and the Twins need a lefty, but the Twins are going to drive a hard bargain right now. And Alex isn't the type to overpay for a guy, especially on June 2nd. So he'll wait, see how things going, but fans should know, and I think they do. He turns every stone over. He will
Yeah.
try to every way to get a player. And I fully anticipate that he'll, depending on how the needs are, they're going to let these guys try to play the corner outfields for a while, see what happens. You might not have to have one of those, but if you need another outfielder, I think you'll get one. Those are the easiest guys to pick up as you get near the deadline. Some teams fall out, and I think if he needs to, he'll add another spirit starter or
I
another
think
bullpen if
you're going to
bullpen
get
if
some
you need to.
answers. By the deadline, you'll get some answers. Like Waldrop's going to have some starts under his belt.
Yeah,
Kelenic's going to have some time with his new stance and the way he's swinging now. Like there's some answers that you're going to get by that point to know what you
right.
need to do.
Whether you need to platoon and left or whether Kelenic can do it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he did it the first 45 last year in Seattle. He was like an over 900 OPS and
Yeah.
10 homers. It was raking until and he slumped and then kicked the cooler. So I had a polarizing suggestion on Twitter tonight. Nobody gets the Twitter audience more riled up than Tommy Pham because of the
What'd he
things
do?
he's done off the field. So people
Yeah.
get so riled up. It's amazing. In this, it's so everything's so politicized. It's like I know nothing about what he's, his politics or anything. I just know this guy takes no shit, and he almost got into it tonight with Contreras. And after the
I
game
didn't see
said,
that.
Contreras, he went out of the baseline. The third base coach made a terrible decision to send him on a fly ball to shallow left. He's out by 10 feet. He goes out of the baseline because Contreras gave him a lane. And he
Oh,
did have a
yeah.
lane,
What's he
but he
doing?
went out of the lane and lowered his shoulder. But then Contreras was barking at him and waving the mitt at him like bye and said something to him. Tommy Pham's walking back to the dugouts, not saying anything. Contreras says something. He turns and he says, you don't want a problem with me or something like that. It's like bowed up, So then after the interview afterwards, you're gonna laugh when you hear it.
I just
He
read
says,
it.
I was walking back to the dugout and he starts talking all that hoorah shit. And he said, I don't start anything, but I'll finish anything. I'm ready to finish anything. He goes, I do a lot of fighting in the off season. So I'm ready to fuck somebody up.
Yeah.
And then he goes, take that, make it that what you want to. And he walked away from the interview. But I'm like, I last year, Ken Rosenthal and a couple other guys did a story on Tommy Pham at the start of the playoffs about this misperception of Tommy Pham. There's this perception because he's played for so many teams that he's a cancer in the clubhouse, and because he says things like, and he punched Jock Peterson and all that,
Yeah.
So there's this perception that guys don't like him. Ken talked to a bunch of guys like Hensky and everything. He said, God, we love that guy. We're going to miss him, man. And he talked to like 12 guys who said the same thing. So he's one, we know guys like that, where the perception that one guy's a really good guy because he's smiling all the time, that he's a team leader, and this other guy that looks angry all the time, or that looks like Markakis, looks like he's not having fun. He must be miserable, but he's a big time team leader. And there's this perception of Tommy Pham that is not apparently what it is in the clubhouse at all. But I said, I like his fire, the guy that takes no shit. And in a postseason, I like what he brings to a team. And look at his numbers in the postseason. He's hit 313, 6 bombs, 850 or so OPS in 30 some postseason games over 9 postseason series. He had a home run last year for Arizona in the LDS, the LCS, and the World Series. I don't know. I like guys like that.
We've all got a friend like that. He might get a little fired up and things might go haywire once in a while, but from 98% of the time, he's one of your favorite people. And maybe you even laugh when he does this thing.
Right.
I bet all his old teammates are fired up about that and saying, I wish that something would have happened because they know him. But we've all got guys like that in our life. And I bet, Sale had his reputation coming over. And you get to know
Sale had a reputation. And a lot of people said when they traded for him, they really want to bring this guy into the clubhouse.
Yeah.
And I wrote something saying from his former teammates that I talked to that all said, like Brzezinski, like Flowers, they said he's the greatest teammate we had. He's the guy that speaks up for everybody else when something needs to be said. He's fearless.
Yep.
And sure enough, he gets here. Now all the fans have quickly seen with his post-game interviews and everything, totally accountable. Favorite guy. Everybody in the clubhouse loves the guy. And I'm not saying everybody loves Pham, but it's kind of the same misperception from afar when he does stuff like, Sale cut up a uniform, that kind of thing, broke a TV set on a rehab start. Tommy Pham just not going to back down from anything. And he lowered his shoulder. He went out of his way and knocked Contreras down. But he was walking back to the dugout. He wasn't going any further with it, but he's not going back down when somebody barks at him.
Yeah.
So, and he's probably pissed off because they're so bad,
Yeah, I think that's a tough place to go for a lot of guys.
A guy like him does not need to be on a terrible team like that.
No, the guys with that kind of energy that are that fired up and competitive, they're going to create something if it's not there.
I guarantee you he'll be on some contender down the stretch because teams that know what he can do in a postseason and know that he brings a fire, our team's going to line up to get him. Somebody will trade for him again, even though he's 36 now. He still can hit. Look at he's still hitting this year. Yeah, he's still hitting this. He's in great shape.
Yeah,
he's still hitting this year. So anyway, that was another math name I threw. And the other reason I threw it out, beyond the fact I love the way he doesn't take any shit, is that he's a great pickup. He's not making money, and he's with the White Sox. He's eminently available. It's not going to take a lot to get him. So that's why it's one that makes sense as opposed to just looking at guys like, Jock with Arizona. Mm-hmm. Well, Arizona still thinks they're in it right now, and he's raking, and he's a platoon guy, he's a good one. But it's funny. It's funny that some of the same people that say, Tommy Pham, no way, no, please, are like, yeah, bring Jock back. I'm like, you guys don't know what Jock was like in the clubhouse. You assume because the pearls and we might be those motherfuckers and all that, you assume that he was, loved by everyone.
Yep.
Well, the way it worked out, he was loved. But there were a time we were like, that could get tiresome, that act.
Yeah.
And he wasn't like real lovable, he didn't like become friends with everybody right away, that kind of thing.
That happens. I mean, it's a lot of times the guys that are doing cartwheels for the media are their heads in the wrong place. I mean, it's there's certain guys on teams that just cannot. I always ask myself this question. I'm like, you're making 20 mil. You're a good looking guy. You got a beautiful wife. You go out to restaurants. Everybody wants your, like, how do you need more attention?
Right.
And you watch these guys and they need more, they can't get enough attention. And those guys are usually the toughest to be around, that are always just dancing.
Yeah.
Media comes in and they just go straight to their locker and can't wait to get interviewed. And then you got the guys that kind of get like a bad reputation because that's just not a side of the game that they care about. Like, they're focused on the team, they're focused on winning. Those
Yeah.
guys are usually pretty good, but there's other guys that you're seeing
That's
them do
why
these
Sale
interviews.
is. He's
Yeah,
never in the clubhouse when we go in. He's
yeah,
hardly ever in there.
it's just not a thing
He's
for
doing
him.
his thing. Yeah.
But
And
he'll talk if you need him to, and he'll give you
he
a good
talks
quote.
after every start.
Yep.
As long as you want to get him, and if you want to get him, you grab him, he'll talk. But he's
Yeah.
not going to stop and wait for you to come over. One of those guys that you can
Let me
go
weigh
to
in
every
on
day.
today's game. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And we appreciate those guys that are like that, but
Yeah.
he's not one of those guys. Markakis wasn't one of those guys. If you wanted him, he would talk and be great, but he never stopped and looked for an interview or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to make out Jock Peterson to be like that he was a bad guy or anything, because I thought he was a huge part of that team winning. He brought an edge and it worked in that setting. But who's to say over a full season and all that, if he was just kind of aloof. He did his thing, man, but he delivered. He delivered when it needed to happen,
Yep.
and he wouldn't back down from anybody. And I like guys like Jock Peterson who bring on the pressure and talk shit to the other team, and they're not scared of it. I like those guys, man. But don't, on the one hand, say Tommy Pham would be terrible to be here, but Jock Peterson was great to be here. They're similar in a lot of ways, even though they had it out with each other.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing an element like that into a clubhouse, especially when you got a great clubhouse like the Braves do. They can absorb a guy like that, and Pham's not even a guy like that, but they can absorb a guy like a Jock Peterson down the stretch drive, and no problem at all. So.
You know who else was like that was AJ Pierzynski.
Yeah.
I heard so many bad things about him, and then he got in the clubhouse and I mean, he would call everybody out all day long.
Yeah,
but it
talk
makes
shit
you
to
laugh
everybody.
and it keeps it fun, and it keeps a lot of guys in check that need to be in check. And I had a good time playing with him. I didn't think
Josh Donaldson.
Donnie, yep, same thing. There's a lot of guys like that in the game that, I mean, they can rub some people the wrong way that don't necessarily want the truth all the time. But if you could, I would look at somebody and their personality, and some guys are a lot, but I would look at how they played. Donaldson was balling out at third every day, making plays for you. And it's like, if you want to put your music on, go ahead, buddy. You want to wear something loud and draw some attention, go ahead. Because I know that when the game starts, he's there and he posts every day.
And he wielded the needle all the time, which is what I think you're talking about, Pierzynski. I mean, he was on everybody.
Everybody.
If somebody had fucked up or given up a home run to him sometime, or some guy had done something stupid, nobody was safe from Donaldson. Nope. And I assume Pierzynski was the same way, right?
Same way. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, but
I saw that from AJ covering him
in the clubhouse. That's why there's people that don't like him, because they're the guy that say it. But a lot of teammates are glad it got said out loud.
You need to have a guy like that, though, that'll say something that everybody else is thinking, but they don't want to be the guy to rub somebody the wrong way, because they like for everybody to like them, which is most guys. Most guys want everybody to like them. And then there's some guys
there's like selfish things. Guys can do selfish things that kind of build over course of the season. Like this guy's always, late for something, or taking extra hacks in the cage, or doing this and kind of just doing selfish things. And you get the right guy in the clubhouse to call him out consistently.
Yeah.
And then everybody laughs when it's brought up. Like that's the best way to get the message across, that like, hey, we're all sick of this. And slowly that behavior just disappears. But if it doesn't, nobody calls you out. You just kind of keep doing your own thing.
They got Olsen is like a quiet, the sneaky one that bust on. Like he has a thing with the Latin guys. They all love they love the Latin guys love him, but he like you would never think he's the one that busts balls all the but he does, and he's
Hmm.
like quietly does it. He's like a sneaky ball buster.
Sneaky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you
So
need that.
anyway, all right. Well, it's gonna be interesting to see, but as bad as the record look going 3-4 against the A's and the Nats, these aren't last year's A's and Nats. They're both improved. And I mean, we've seen both of those teams take a series from some good teams. So I thought there was a lot to like about what the Braves did, especially in the Oakland series. They win 2 games and the one they lost, like I said, they scored 9 runs. You
Yeah.
know, if Sale has a normal game for him, they're going to sweep that series. So,
Hard to be patient, but you got to be in baseball.
yeah. All right, that's it. Long road trip. We'll do, I guess, 3 of these during the trip, one after the 2 games in Boston, and we'll talk to you guys again. We appreciate you guys watching us on YouTube and listening to us on all the podcasts.